So I wasn't much of a partier in high school. But then I got to college and see all these guys that I idolize just killing it, tearing it up. And I'm like, good, I got to be like these guys, So, you get into that, not that was a great culture, and not that you would want your kids to go through that, but you had to be tough just to survive the social life with those guys.
That's true.
Just to survive, like, after the Nationals, everybody went on a bender every year, and I was like, if you didn't have a cold beer in your hand by 1 o'clock, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they were calling you out. You were getting called out like, come on, let's get out of here. They were calling you out. So it was definitely a work hard, play hard environment back then.
This is the Full Tilt Podcast with Hatch.
Okay, Kevin Dressler, how we doing?
Good day for this day off for our team. So
yeah, Clones looked good last night.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. Tell you what, there was some scrapping going on last night.
There was some great. There was 2 overtime matches at, 165 and 174 that we split. But boy, both of them were great matches. Could have went either way.
Oh yeah. Tell you what, both guys doing such a great job with those programs.
Oh yeah, Schwab does a great job. They're a little banged up right now and injured. I can feel their pain because we had the exact same thing last year. So I know they're a few horses down right now, but that's just the game we live in.
Yeah, plus you got 2 teams that wrestle hard like that. There was a lot of back and forth, a lot of points being. A lot of legs getting grabbed. It was a really entertaining match.
Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because being here in Ames, if somebody would have told me that myself and Kevin Dressler would be sitting down having a discussion in Cardinal Red.
I know, that's crazy.
But I had to be respectful.
How life revolves. Yeah, that's right. You got your Iowa State colors on.
Yeah, I had to be respectful.
Good for you,
shoot, that's all right though. Two ex-Hawkeyes, one legendary Hawkeye, and no, they're not some legendary Hawkeye, but
I don't know about that.
but good enough though. But no, we appreciate you joining the show. This is gonna be an amazing interview. Obviously, we're gonna get into a lot of old school stuff, new school stuff, and who knows, wherever the conversation takes us, we'll go. I'll apologize right away if you can't understand. You might want to slow this down to 0.75 because I've got a Filipino mother.
Okay.
Talk pretty fast, and I get excited when I talk to my friends. But it is what it is. But I wanted to cover. Started obviously. We're gonna get into some current stuff and everything. But the Kevin Dressler, I guess, story in my mind started back in the Iowa days. In the 80s. You were, especially that 86 team, but you were there for what, 82, 86, that era, and really one of the cornerstones, because I grew up watching, that particular era. And it was amazing just watching. And tell us a little bit about, back in the 80s, what that room was like and what that did for you.
Well, I was there. I was in Iowa City from 81 to 86 as an athlete, and then I stayed till the fall of 88, kind of as a GA Hawkeye Club guy. So I got to spend 7 years in Iowa City, coming out of high school in 1981. Wow. And, now that I'm older, I guess the thing that sticks out to me most was I probably didn't realize how much. I think your high school years and your college years are very formative years. I don't didn't probably realize to really maybe 10 years ago or just even more recent that what an impact that environment had on me in terms of my future coaching jobs and success. Because, if you think about it, the gold standard for wrestling, it's kind of what Kale's doing right now at Penn State. But, you got to understand, I showed up at the University of Iowa. They'd won 4 national titles. I was on 5 NCAA championship teams. So my senior year, we won our 9th. I think it was every year that I was in college, it was sewed up going into Saturday. It was over. It was already mathematically clinched. So the bar was so high. It was so competitive. And you get there and the expectation of just being elite. And, everybody talked about being a national champion. And I just assumed probably at that age that every program talked about, it wasn't about getting on the podium and being an All-American. Excuse me, let me get my coffee going.
Very good.
it was, it's like first or nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was extremely competitive. If you think about it and we had so many guys that just walked on that were fantastic. I was a guy that got a little bit of scholarship money, but you got all this room full of alpha males. And so it made for a great recipe for having a wrestling team if you're Coach Gable. But Coach Gable was the reason that you had that many alpha males in the room. But what it did was it put everything I did after that was if we're going to do this high school thing, we got to do it at the highest level.
Mm-hmm.
If we're going to do this college thing, we got to do it at the highest level. And, just trying to teach everybody else what you learned during those formative years. Like, okay, there's a different way to do things if you want to be elite. And I use that word a lot with my team lately, challenge them to be elite. There's different expectations. There's different training standards. There's different mindset. There's everything. And I think that's the biggest thing now as I'm doing this is all of that stuff that I learned and that mentality I was around for 7 straight years every day of my life just became ingrained. And so when you go do your first high school job and your second high school job in Virginia Tech and Iowa State, that's the bar. And you don't accept. Accept isn't the right word, but you don't strive for anything else. You strive to do all those principles and all that work ethic and all of that stuff that you learned just as what you expect everybody else to do. Mm-hmm. So I guess I'm thankful that I got a chance to really learn, and it kind of forms you. We had a lot of fun in college, but there was also a heck of a lot of work. Mm-hmm. So that's probably a serious way to start out a podcast, but
yeah.
I think that was probably the best for me and the way I was put together. I was a kid out of high school that was really into wrestling and really competitive and worked probably harder than most kids, and to the point that I was kind of weird because of the way that I approached training. And so when I went there, I fit in really good.
Yeah.
I wasn't great. I didn't show up there, and I wasn't a superstar. So it took a while, but that environment gave me a chance to really grow fast.
Yeah, small town Humboldt, Iowa.
Yeah.
Shoot. That's was it pretty intimidating when you first got to Iowa? As far as like I said, you said you weren't the highest recruited. You got a little bit of money, whatever. But was it a little bit intimidating when you first got there, or a lot intimidating?
I think it was. I don't know. I think it was intimidating, but probably more exciting than intimidating. Mm-hmm. I was just ready for the challenge. Like I kind of went in naive and thought that right away I was because I'm at Iowa, I'm just supposed to be a national champion. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's the honeymoon phase when you get to a big program like that. Like, wow, it's really cool. I'm hanging out with Barry Davis. I'm hanging out with the Bannocks. All these guys you grow up, like you say, watching on Iowa Public Television. Mm-hmm. I'm hanging out with Randy Lewis, and so you're kind of in that honeymoon phase. Like, it's really cool that I get to wear the gear, and then all of a sudden, that I think for the guys that are really competitive, that wears off, and it's like, okay, now it's my turn. Mm-hmm. It's my turn. I need to get in there, and I need to be that guy. So that was kind of the process for me.
Yeah, that's what was when you first got to Iowa. What's some vivid memories as far as like the room was concerned? Obviously, I remember when I first got there, it was 4 months before I got a takedown, probably, because I wasn't very good coming out of high school. I wasn't. But what was like your first kind of experience? Like, wow, okay, I got to really get going.
I went to Jay Robinson was the assistant coach at Iowa when I got there, and Jay was just starting to run his camps in the summer. So I graduated high school and went to Waverly, Iowa. He had a 10 or 12-day camp there and trained and jumped into the workouts there for the first time. So I got a chance to start rolling around with the Iowa team like in June of right after I graduated, like a month after I graduated high school. And that was, that's eye-opening because you do take a lot of beatings. And just the runs. I remember going out and running with Barry Davis one morning, and I thought I was a runner. And, it was 3 miles of hell, just trying to even keep up with him. But right away I had I won an all-star meet against a really good guy. So I kind of started seeing results early on, like, hey, these guys train really, really hard, but dang, I'm starting to beat guys already, and I've only been here a month,
Yeah.
then I went to Iowa City later that summer, and again, you take those beatings, but I don't know. I was a weird kid in that I never ever walked out of there thinking, all right, I'm terrible. You know, it's like, you know, I was just one of those probably half full guys that I remember wrestling Lenny Zaleski one time, and he took me down like probably 15 times, and I got one takedown, and I remember actually walking back to the dining hall, you know, telling him how excited I was to get that one takedown. You know?
Really?
So I was just a weird kid in that I didn't, the losses in the practice room didn't bother me one bit. You know,
Really?
when I got beat in competition,
Yeah.
it hung with me longer, but I was a really optimistic guy that I always tried to find the really positive side of the workout.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, because because a lot of people goes the other way. You know,
Yeah.
obviously they take a look at him, and man, my goodness.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you're looking at him. You're talking to one. I mean, it was one of those things where it's like, man, can I just at least grab a leg today? That'd be awesome. You know. So
A funny story is I wrestled Lenny Zaleski in the All-Star meet at Cedar Rapids Prairie. Lenny was a fifth-year senior. Lenny just got second in the nation. He got fourth the year before, so Lenny was a stud. So here I am, a true freshman, and I get to the final wrestle-off with Lenny, and Lenny's kind of he's the top guy in the ladder. And we wrestle at Cedar Rapids High School, which is his high school.
Oh, yeah, Prairie.
Cedar Rapids Prairie,
Yep.
your high school. And it's packed. I don't even know how many people the gym held because Jimmy and Lenny and Barry Davis were all on the team. So that very fittingly, they had the wrestle-off, the final wrestle-off at Cedar Rapids Prairie. And Lenny just probably took me down 6 or 7 times. But the last takedown, we had one side was, they broke up the Iowa squad in 2 different sides. And I think with 30 seconds to go, he took me down for like the 6th or 7th time. And then he double fish hooked me. I fished with both fingers. He double fish hooked me while he was on top of me. So if you know Lenny's a prankster. He's a major jokester. So I was I think somebody actually took a picture of it. I was in the Cedar Rapids paper the next day with double fish hook. So you gotta work your way to the top.
you got to watch out for those Leskies.
Oh, yeah.
You got to watch out for those Prairie guys in general.
To this day, Lenny and Jimmy Zaleski will send me an emoji with a fish hook.
Oh, really? But that's the thing, though. When you get to know those guys.
45 years ago, and they're still busting my chops.
Those guys, their sense of humor is
Oh, my
just,
God.
it's so unique. Those guys are, but I tell you what, you talk about 2 animals. My goodness. I mean, that's, how between them, and you referenced Barry Davis already.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how me and my brother really got started.
Yeah.
My dad used to drive the school bus for Burt Prairie, and then he always picked up all the wrestling trips.
Oh, yeah.
And so when we were little tiny guys, it was Barry and Jimmy and Lenny who used to grab us and roll around with us and everything, and that's how we started wrestling.
Oh, I remember. I think it was either my first or second. It was probably my first year. School got out in May, and I decided, I'm just going to stay around and train for a while because I knew the Zaleskis were local and Barry Davis was local, and so most guys left. So there's literally only like 4 guys probably back there training. I said, I'm going to train for like the whole month of May until we go to camps, just to get better. So I decided to stay there and train, and all that was, every day that we kind of had everybody just kind of showed up at 3:30 if you wanted to get a scrap in. And all that showed up that week was Lenny and Jimmy for like 2 weeks. So I had to wrestle Lenny one day, Jimmy one day, Lenny, Jimmy. And I just got the shit beat out of me for like 3, Because Jimmy was 2 weights. Not that Jimmy needed to be 2 weights bigger than me, but he was 2 weights bigger than me.
Man, yeah.
So, but I was a weird kid. I was like, let me take this beating for 3 weeks.
Yeah. It's funny. Me and Ironside and I were just talking about this a couple weeks ago when I interviewed him, and because we lived close to Cedar Rapids, and Tom and Terry needed somebody to train with, all summer long, and we were the only 2 that lived even close, and it was like, okay, great. So he's wrestling Tom one day, I'd wrestle Terry, then we'd swap, and yeah.
It's tough.
It was tough. That was just all the logistical logistical benefits that you get for living close, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's good times though. But that those early 80 teams, I mean, man, you guys had some absolute powerhouses. I mean, you mentioned Barry, Heffernan, Bannock's, yourself, I just remember as a kid watching those, and it was just, it was such an exciting time of Iowa wrestling. Who were the biggest characters on that team? I'm sure there's a lot of them, but who are the characters?
Well, when I got there, Randy Lewis had just graduated. I think he went
Randy
through.
Lewis, he's kind of a character.
Yeah, he's a character.
He's a character?
He wrestled. He just had got done. I think he went through in 4 straight years. So he wasn't that old. He's probably 22 or 23 when I was 18. And obviously he's a character. And then after I think another character, I think you said you interviewed Royce Alger. Royce Alger came in. I was a couple years older than Royce. So, you take that generation from Royce to Randy, which is about a 7-year period. You got Rico Chiapparelli.
Oh, yeah.
You got the Bannocks.
Yeah.
Those guys, everybody's personalities are different. But again, the one thing everybody had in common is you had a bunch of alpha males that just, thought that they were the bomb.
Yeah.
And, Marty Kistler.
Yeah.
He was a crazy man. And, oh gosh, I'm trying to think who else we had, and you have, you had guys like the Heffernans. They were really tough out of Ohio. Brad Penrith was something else. He was really, really good. We had, I'm trying to think, Goldman, he was my roommate for a lot of years. Goldman, he was very unique. Here's a kid that comes out of Colorado that probably never sniffed a beer till he was 20 years old, 21 years old, and just trained, coming in. He was kind of like the Steiners. I kind of left as the Steiners were coming in, but Goldman was working out 3 times a day, 7 days a week.
Really?
Just come in and, he'd come in, and even to the point I think they had to sit him and down and say he'd come in at 6:30 in the morning and then get done with a couple classes and go do like a 10:30, and then he'd do a 3:30, and then he's back in there at 9 o'clock at night. I mean, that's just how Goldman's was built. So, I now that I'm coaching this generation, I try to explain to them what old school is, but that was old school. I mean, Gable, when you got ready like this time of year, you just started going 3 days. Yeah. Maybe three days in a row. So you had 9 workouts in 3 days. You couldn't do that now.
No.
There would be way too much crybabying and, everybody be in the training room. And I'm throwing them under the bus because it's the truth. But the amount of, people wonder why Gable won at that time. He was light years ahead of training, and I know training's evolved and different now and kids are better, but the confidence you got in just being in that kind of shape, where you just knew that when the match started, you were going to get that baby going, and I'm going to chase you around for 7 minutes, and if you better make sure you can stand up for 7 minutes. I mean, it was just ingrained in us, and didn't know any different. Didn't know, we just thought everybody's going 3 days.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't imagine some of did you ever stop? And I mean, it was probably very, very difficult during practice, but and take a peek around at some of the matchups that were going on at the time in your room. I mean, that had to be it was interesting when I interviewed Mark, and I probably should have done more of this when I was in college. Maybe I would have got better. I don't know. But Mark used to schedule how Gable just say, okay, all right, you got hour, 15 minutes, whatever. Just and then it was basically an unwritten rule that you just wrestle until you get tired, and then you go in and get a drink, and first one to go get a drink, look kind of soft, and it's what it was. And that's why it worked. And he said he used to kind of schedule his times when he would say, for example, Terry Brands was wrestling, or Tom Brands was wrestling McElravy, and he'd want to watch that, so he'd get 5 minutes of watching that. That would be his break time, and then he'd go wrestle because he'd know the fact that they're going to take a little break. So he actually got to watch some of those battles. It's kind of interesting, isn't it?
Yeah,
he kind of thought about that.
Most guys, when we take a break, you're just trying to survive and get the win back.
Exactly.
Well, that's probably why Ironside was pretty darn good.
Yeah, he was pretty good.
Yeah, he was good. He was good.
Yeah, but did you ever were there times where you got to kind of sit back and say, "Oh shoot, so and so's wrestling at so and so right now. This is going to be." First going to be flying.
I don't think you really realize it until you leave and you look back. Like I said, I just learned a lot. You just say, well, why am I the way that I am? And then back to your formative years of just being in an elite environment with elite expectations and elite training and elite mindset. It all forms who you are. And then everything you do to that particular level. And so, I mean, gosh, having Barry Davis, you might, on a Monday, you might wrestle Barry Davis. On a Tuesday, you might wrestle Randy Lewis. On a Wednesday, you might wrestle Lenny Zaleski. And, even during the season, 4 days a week, like you said, you go out, you get warmed up, you wrestle for over an hour, and you get a drink when you need to get a drink, and you better not sit down too long because your dude's going to call you out. He's going to be, Lenny Zaleski standing on the middle of the mat. I swear to God, the guy never got a drink. And he would just stand, he'd go get a quick sip of water, and then he'd walk back to the middle and just look at you. And I'm like, dude, I just sat down. I mean, the head games with it were he wasn't, he might have been exhausted, but he wasn't going to let you know he's exhausted. Yeah. I mean, the mental games that were going on with who was the best guy was impressive.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy. Speaking of mental games, I mean, your senior year, I mean, obviously, came in, 4th seed, right? In the national tournament?
I was the number 1 seed.
Oh,
Yeah.
My information said, okay, number 1 seed.
Yep.
But you knocked off some back-to-back seeds with either before in the nationals?
Yeah, I ended up, you know what? My junior year, I was actually 2nd seed, and I got upset in the semis. And then my senior year, I was number 1 seed. I had Joe Gibbons both years.
That's
Joe
right.
won it our junior year, Joe here from Iowa State. And then I won it our senior year, and he got 3rd. So I got 4th, 1st, and he got 1st, 3rd.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
So that senior year, what's the psyche going into your senior year national finals? Does Gable say something special to you? Does you or you just had enough confidence in yourself that you're going to get it?
I think it's just when you put in that much time in the room, and again, I try to explain to our athletes like this, like it's kind of like when we can all relate. At least a lot of us that went to college together can relate to being a state champion or going to the state championships. Most of the guys in my team are state champions, and I say every one of you guys showed up at the state tournament the first day of weigh-ins, and you stepped on this scale, and you had a pretty good idea that you were going to win it. Like, you came to win it, right? Even if you might not have won it, somebody got you in the finals or whatever. You came to win it. You had that much confidence in your season and in the practice room, in the stuff you'd done in the summer. Everything built that level of confidence. You had a body of work that gave you the confidence when you stepped on the scale that I'm good enough to win it. Right? That's what happens when you're in a really, really elite program in an elite room. That you step on the scale at the NCAA tournament. Like I stepped on both years to win it. Now at the NCAA level, you probably have, to be quite honest, there might be 4 or 5 guys on average per weight that step on the scale on Thursday morning that they're there to win it. They think they're going to win it. Not all 4 can win. And that's when you get to the barn burners and the semis and the semis and the finals, right? But there's a bunch of guys. I mean, David Carr's senior year and Keegan O'Toole and Messon Brink, all 3 of those guys stepped on the scale to win it.
Yep.
Right? But the other 27 guys didn't.
Right.
Because the body of work and what they had done throughout the year and the confidence wasn't there. It's kind of like when I was a freshman and sophomore in college. I wasn't ready to step on the scale and with the confidence to win it. But by the time I got older, like you just go there. And so I got 4th my junior year, and I was majorly disappointed because it's one thing to step on the scale and in your mind you think you can win it. That's not a conversation you need to have with anybody. It's just a conversation between yourself internally that I put the work in. I'm good enough to beat these guys, and that's something that's really earned. So my senior year was the same way. It was like I'd wrestled. I'd beaten Joe Gibbons 2 weeks before. I'd beaten the guy from Lehigh twice that year. He was 3rd the year before. I competed against everybody, all year long, or at least had a benchmark, and I knew what I was getting myself into at that point.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's an interesting mindset. Yeah, because and you talked about the differences with the kids this year, with the kids, I guess, in this era a little bit, and I'd like to go into that a little bit. But do you think is it kind of still tried and true? I mean, back in the day, like I said, you thought that maybe you and Gibbons could win that bracket. That really thought stepping on the scale could win that. It's kind of like the way it is now as well.
Oh yeah, I think so. I think it's the same thing. I think you get the same guys. Like there's guys that
Or do we have more these days?
I think at certain years, I would just say like on average, I believe on average, there's 3, 4, 5 guys that step on the scale that think they can win it. Right. The other guys, there's some guys step on and there's doubt, and then there's some guys that are like, damn, I just made it here, and I hope I can get to Friday.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's truly, I truly believe that your body of work and I tell you guys, when you're ready to be a top 3 guy, you'll know it when you go there. Like you're not going to just go there. Oh I just got lucked into 3rd, because getting 1st, 2nd, or 3rd at the Nationals is really hard.
Yeah.
Right. I consider that elite. If you can wrestle back and get 3rd, you're pretty damn elite. If you get to the NCAA finals, you're pretty darn elite, right? That's my goofy little. That's the way that I approach it. So, I think I just don't think that. I think this generation of wrestlers is so talented. They come out of high school. They've already been in RTCs. They've been in good clubs. They've been around college coaching. Almost every good kid. I mean, look at the freshmen we got in wrestling right now.
It's crazy.
These guys have all been wrestling college guys since they've been 16 years old. I didn't touch a college guy till I was 18 and a half.
Yeah.
I didn't get in a RTC. I didn't know how to drill when I was 18 and a half years old. These kids come in, not only can they drill, but they're so technically sound in every position, right? But that doesn't mean they're tough,
Right.
right? You know, at some point there's got to be, to be the elite guy, you got to be tough and good. But you know, are these guys bigger, faster, stronger? They've been doing, you know, there's obviously a lot more injuries. I think it's documented. There's a lot more injuries in college wrestling now than there was 30, 40 years ago. So what's the reason? Are these guys just that much more dynamic and big, strong, fast, whatever? So, you know, I do recognize that you do have to train. I mean, there's such a thing as training smarter, too. Not saying, you know, Gable and Iowa wrestling wasn't for everybody.
Right.
I mean, there was even a few guys that we had come through that less was better for them, right? And Gable was good enough to recognize that less was better. Like, you know, he trained certain guys a little differently, but for the most part, you better be able to get in and scrap and have that level of toughness and have that level of confidence in your gas tank because you've been through hell all week, every week, all week long.
Now, when he'd have to train those guys a little different, what was the attitude like that towards the rest of, I mean, the 99% of the room?
I think I know when I was like, I got hurt and I was out for a while. I broke my arm and had surgery. And so that, you talk about Ironside watching. I watched a lot my second semester, my second year. And that's when I really started noticing, like, well, why is this guy doing this a little bit different than everybody else? And he only gets on the mat maybe 1 or 1.5 days a week. And I kind of just reinforced that Gable, you know, understood guys differently. He would have them doing stuff that was hard, but they might not be wrestling.
Right.
You know, like they might just be lifting hard or they might be airdyning hard. But he recognized, okay, this guy just maybe doesn't need to wrestle. And it was usually in almost every case, it was somebody that was really good, but so they didn't need the mat reps, you know. But then when they did wrestle, they were really, really good, you know. But he made sure they were doing something else. Yeah. You know.
Now these kids, this day and age here at the Division I level, I mean, you already mentioned, you know, like the Gable training methods they just wouldn't have flown here.
Would have really been a hard time. You know, it's nice to get a kid, because I do think that if you can get kids to really understand the importance of live wrestling, and it's the closest thing to going out there and stepping in Hilton or Carver or Bryce Jordan or all of the places that we wrestle at, you know, is still invaluable, but no way in terms of the masses could you do that.
Yeah, for sure. I remember one time we were, this is really when I really started, you know, getting to know you really well, when you and Dressler were doing those camps down in North Georgia.
You mean Weber?
Yeah. Not Dressler, but you and Weber were doing those camps in North Georgia. And, of course, I graduated with Daryl. He's one of my dear friends. And so I used to come down and bring some guys down there. And one thing still sticks with me to this day, because obviously you guys were uber successful at, and which we'll talk about your high school and the coaching experiences. But one thing that still sticks with me to this day is you said that always the best guys that you've had in your team have always been the ones that just love to wrestle live.
Yep.
They do. I mean, you can't keep them off the mat. They always just like to wrestle. I mean, some kids like to wrestle 50% of the time, but they like to lift weights. They like to do all the other stuff.
Yep.
Their best guys have always just liked to wrestle, and you had to kind of almost not really force them to do other things like lifting weights and stuff like that, but they just really love to wrestle.
No, and I always say there's always an exception to every. There's always an exception,
of course.
But for the most part, 95% of the time, my experience has been the best guys that I've had just love to wrestle. I mean, I had a kid at Virginia Tech, Devin Carter. He'd wrestle live for hours a day. Like he would wrestle live all the time. He was a 3-time All-American NCAA runner-up. You know,
he was tough.
He was David McFadden, who was, we had him as a freshman, but then he All-American 3 more times at Virginia Tech. That dude just loved to live wrestle. I mean, I could go on and on. Ty Walls, some of my guys. David Carr, that dude freaking loves to live wrestle. He live wrestles all the time. He missed like 4 matches in college because besides live wrestling and practice all the time, he dinged up his knee and he might have missed 3 or 4 matches his whole college career in 5 years. Because he had a 5-year career because of COVID. So I just think it's a great formula for success.
Yeah. Now, do you see that these days where are you seeing more that don't necessarily like to wrestle live as much now? They like the almost the new school type of way of training.
I do see that it's because it's hard.
Yeah.
Trying to convince kids that hard's good and you got that the growth comes outside of your comfort zone. And so when you go to college and you step into a room full of sharks and you get the shit beat out of you, you got two directions to go, right? You can embrace it and say, I need to be that guy doing that, or you can take the beatings and watch the rest of your career.
Yeah.
So you like the guys that are competitive that just say, okay, I'm going to go in there. I mean, there's all kinds of success stories of guys that came through that weren't superstars out of high school. Look at, even Darrell Weber was good, but he wasn't like Joe Williams coming in.
Exactly.
You got the kid from Eagle Grove. What's his name that won the Nationals?
Whitmer.
Yeah. There's all kinds of stories of guys that came in, blue collar, kids from little bitty towns in Iowa. Look at the Zaleskis, and there's all kinds of stories of kids that grew up in Iowa that stepped in there that were good, but they weren't great, and that environment just elevated them in the amount of confidence. And that formula for wrestling is hard and training incredibly hard and going through the 3-a-days at the end of the year before the postseason was a really good formula for success.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned it. That's so difficult to replicate now. That type of stuff. Kind of go into a little bit about that, like how you've had, what type of adjustments you've had to make, because obviously, you guys are.
We just don't wrestle live very much because the bodies just don't seem to hold up, and we do have some kids that like it. That would, like I said, I think a guy like David Carr, he could have wrestled, every day. He was pretty darn tough. But for the most part, I think we stay away from it and stray away from it because of the injuries.
Yeah.
It blows my mind. It blows my mind how easy kids get hurt now. And we wrestle a fraction of what we did. Like, we might wrestle 20% of what we did back when I was an athlete, and we get hurt twice as much.
Yeah,
it just blows my mind.
You think it? Does it have anything to do with like the mileage that these kids have?
I think some people think that. Yeah, I think some people think that. Okay, these kids, they didn't like. I played football. Yeah, I played every sport until I was probably a sophomore in high school.
Yeah,
then I just played football and wrestled. So, but I wrestled a lot. My last couple of years of high school. 9 months a year. So I don't know. But a lot of these kids, they do specialize, and they're going to the Tulsa Nationals when they're 6 and 7, and we didn't have that many miles in our body, so there might be some. And the style's different. You see a lot more diving, you see a lot more splitting legs, you see a lot more scrambling, and when they're scrambling, I tell our guys, if you give somebody your leg and they got your leg for 3.5 minutes, you might not, even if you're not getting scored on, your knee's probably going to be really sore the next day. Yeah, when you're fighting that.
It was another interesting one. Like I said, I've taken so much from you in the past. You probably don't have any idea like how much I've learned and how much I've absorbed just by having discussions with you. Especially when I was coaching at not high school, but in college. But you'd mentioned one time, you said we were talking about the scrambling, and people blowing their knees out, blowing this out, and everything else. He's like, well, you're like, I don't know. Back in the day, when we used to square our hips up, there wasn't a whole lot of ACL hairs.
No, your hips are your best weapon in wrestling. Like, you learn how to square your hips and squash guys. Yeah. Right. It's a lot easier on your body. It gets the other guy tired. It's just much more sound technique. And you look at guys like Aaron Brooks, one of the big. That guy squares his hips better than anybody I've ever seen. Yeah. The really, really good guys. At the international level in freestyle, you get on a shot on them, they're not splitting your legs and rolling around. Yep. They're crushing you. Yep. And so we always go there. There's kids that come in that have that skill set, so you hate to take it away from them if they're really good at it. But you also got to remind them, like, guess what, buddy? Your knee's pretty important to wrestling. Yeah. So your chances of just common sense. Somebody's got your leg for 3.5 minutes of a 7-minute match. You're probably going to get it ripped up at some point. Yeah, it's just inevitable.
Yeah, especially in college. It's high school and college, two totally different things when it comes to potentially dangerous. Yeah, it's just crazy. Yeah. Another thing is just so much different than back in the day, and I still coach club now, and you get these kids that and I'm not trying to hate on the new kids. I think our level of skill is just incredible. Like how good at wrestling and how just knowledgeable they are in certain positions. But when we start talking about weight cutting, it's like I was like, listen, you aren't even cutting any weight. Literally, listen, you weight cutting. Let me tell you about weight cutting. Yeah. and I was in the '90s. You're in the '80s, which is a whole different deal. The centuries are just tougher the previous centuries are always just tougher. So I'm just, I want to hear your perspective on like 80s, 2020s now, as far as like, I know it's totally different, but.
Well, I think the rules are much more conducive to safe weight cutting and not as much crazy weight cutting, because there is a, body fat test with hydration. So it's a lot more scientific right now. And the fact that, now everything's a 2-hour weigh-in where we weighed in the night before and 5 hours for dual meets. Yeah. So you could crash and recover on a night before weigh-in. You could even semi-crash and recover on a 5-hour weigh-in. But in a 2-hour weigh-in, you better be living close to your weight like all around the clock. Yeah. Because in a 2-hour weigh-in, if you're losing 10 pounds the last day, even if you're a big guy, or you're losing 7 pounds and you're a little guy in the last 24 hours, you're going to feel it out there. You're going to feel it out there. And you make yourself very vulnerable. But yeah, that's always the tough part of the sport. That's why I say wrestling is the toughest sport out there, because no other sport, all of our athletes that go to the dining hall, not any of those sports out there have to go, well, you know what? I probably can't eat, I can only eat about 3 things today. 3. I got to have a couple small portions here. The rest of them just go in there and take it for granted.
Yeah.
All right, but our guys got to go in there with a focus, with a discipline, with a plan, or they don't compete, or they don't make the team, or they don't compete at the highest level. So, you got guys that would cut crazy amounts of weight, and there's a toughness factor to it that there's just some kids out there again that are really, really good, but the minute you have them cut weight, they fall apart.
Yeah.
They'd fall apart, and they just don't have the discipline to, again, I'm talking about being elite, but elite people have great discipline. Yeah. Elite people have great discipline, and it's the difference between, in our sport, it's the difference between being elite and not elite, because there's a lot of kids that are elite in the summer. Like I always say, I used to be a young college coach, and I'd see our guys training in July and be all excited thinking, man, this kid's going to be so good for us next year. And look at him, he's just killing everybody all June and July. And then we get to October, November, and he's nowhere to be seen because he doesn't have the discipline to be at the weight he needs to be at. Yeah. And the weight cutting component cracked him. Yeah. And he's a fraction of what he was in June and July. Yeah. So I said, I want to see a guy that can come out here and kick somebody's ass about 5 pounds overweight all week long. Right. Then we got a guy. Yeah. Then we got a guy.
That's a great way to look at it like that. Yeah.
Then we got a guy.
Yeah. Who used to suck some big weight back in the day in Iowa? Were you a big weight cutter?
No, I think I was pretty disciplined at it. I did have to cut, It's like one of those things I had to either choose 150 or 142, and I wanted to be the big guy, and of course it was really competitive in the room, and I had to really work to get there. Like I had to discipline. I had to put a lot of miles in the fall, a lot of road miles in the fall to shrink my body the right way, and I figured it out. And it's one of those things. It's funny. You can have 16 dates on a season, and if you do your weight cut right, you're going to feel good 16 times. But if you vary from it, take a shortcut, get too light, stay too heavy, man, that one time you're going to feel it. I can remember one match that I felt it really bad just because I didn't go through didn't have the discipline and the focus that I needed to in one weight cut, and in the third period I felt it, and so it's what we're talking about is difficult. You think about it, you got to be like, you can't eat and drink like every other human on the planet for 4 months, not just 4 weeks, 4 months. Yeah. So it's easy to fall off the wagon in terms of just the discipline and the diet. But, we had some guys like, back especially, there's some really tough individuals like Randy Lewis who'd get crazy overweight. He'd come in, they would, I heard stories about him going on a trip and they'd have a 4-day road trip. And you have to make weight Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and you get a pound everywhere you go, But, make weight at 2:00, wrestle at 7. Next morning, they'd go show up at a different school, and he'd be 12 over. I'd have to lose 12 pounds. Weigh in at 2, wrestle at 7. Get on the road, get to the third school the third day, he'd be 12 over, And then you get to fourth school, he'd be 11 over. Yeah. And just go out there and win 4 times. Yeah. The level of toughness was just off the charts. Yeah. That's not the way that I guarantee anybody wanted to draw it up. Right. But Gable was never a guy that really, really, very rarely would he harp on you about your weight. Like if you wanted to make that team, you had to do everything right. Like you couldn't, it kind of took care of itself.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, obviously I've heard, just stories and stories about whether it be training, social life, whatever back in the day in the 80s. Just, I don't think people really understand like how tough of an individual that you have to be to either do stuff like that or live a social life at the same time that you're trying to be, like you said, elite, and then go out there and just freaking ransack.
It was definitely
not only
it
a
was
D1
definitely
guy or just like really, really good guys,
It was a work hard, play hard environment, because the 80s, not just, I think any program in the 80s in any sport, I mean, look at the culture of the 80s. I mean, Animal House was a movie, and like it was college, not that college kids don't party now, but just in general, college kids partied a lot more, I think, in the 80s. And so when you go to college, I mean, I was a kid that I think I maybe drank a few beers my senior year of high school, which there's not many Iowa kids out there that don't drink beer, right? High school kids, like most of them, all 9th through 12th graders are drinking beer in Iowa in high school. It's just we're in a beer drinking state. Right? I was one of those guys that thought if I drank a beer, I was going to lose a wrestling match. Right? They brainwashed me. Somebody brainwashed me early. So I wasn't much of a partier in high school. But then I got to college and see all these guys that I idolize just killing it, tearing it up. And I'm like, good, I got to be like these guys, So, you get into that, not that was a great culture, and not that you would want your kids to go through that, but you had to be tough just to survive the social life with those guys. Like,
That's true.
Just to survive, like, after the Nationals, everybody went on a bender every year, and I was like, if you didn't have a cold beer in your hand by 1 o'clock, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they were calling you out. You were getting called out like, come on, let's get out of here. Like they were calling you out. So it was definitely a work hard, play hard environment back then. But I think overall college was, but there was some crazy dudes,
Wow.
There's lucky, and I mean, there was guys that were, and not just at Iowa, but we had some guys that were, you get the guys getting a public intox and a drunk driving, and they'd be wrestling next night. Now you'd be out of there.
Out of there.
Public intox, you'd sit for 6 dates, and drunk driving, you're off the team. I mean, it was just a totally different environment.
Oh yeah, wow. I mean, like I said, I've definitely heard. I'm glad I was in the 90s, not necessarily the 80s, and but I had a great time in the 90s. It wasn't nearly like the 80s, but the 90s was fun though too. It was a good time.
No,
it was a great time.
You meet your best. Meet your best friends and the people that you're in their weddings. And I tell these guys, these guys that you go to school with here at Iowa State University are going to be your lifelong friends. They're going to be your best man, your groomsmen at your weddings. Not that you don't have close friends in high school, but generally the people that you lived and died with and literally lived with. I mean, in high school we have buddies, but in college you live with these guys.
Exactly.
You live with them. You go all summer long, and you go from campus to campus running camps for 10 weeks every summer. You're literally I was with Dwayne Goldman for 5 years of my life. I was with Randy Lewis for 5 years of my life. I was with, you think about all those guys, like 12 months a year. I mean, you're with those guys.
Yeah. What's a great story from the 80s that's going to make people laugh, go, oh wow, whatever, or oh shit? Or...
I think we just had a really good time running. I think doing the camps in the summer was a great way to make money. It was a great way to train. I mean, Jay had 250 kids at every, back then they were called Iowa Intensive Camps. They weren't called Jay Robinson Camps. But so you'd start out and you'd be like at a 2-week camp at Wartburg College. Then we'd go out to Pennsylvania, do a 2-week camp somewhere in Pennsylvania. Then we'd come back to Iowa City and do a 4-week camp. And then we'd end up in Oregon and do a 2-week camp. And just the way that was structured, you'd have like 3 days on as a counselor and 1 day off, 3 days on, 1 day off. Yeah. So those days off, you'd go to different places. Like in Oregon, we go whitewater rafting, and in Pennsylvania, I don't know what the hell we did in Pennsylvania, but you hang out with the same, again, your whole team, 32 guys, and just now you're not cutting weight. Right. You're just having a good time, and every time you go out, you're going to a different place. I mean, Joe's Nighthawk and Waverly, we got thrown out of there every third night, and throwing pool. Playing pool and what do you do in freaking Waverly, Iowa on a Monday night in the middle of the summer, You go drink beer, you play pool, and you end up throwing pool balls at each other. So. But, and then going whitewater rafting. I remember going one time whitewater rafting with the Zaleskis, and I think we had David Ray and Lanny Davidson and a bunch of characters. And just the stories of, flipping the raft and losing like 2 coolers of beer. We just started, just a lot of good times that all college wrestling guys can tell about their teammates. But I think just, we'd literally have to drive our car all the way to Oregon and show up for camp check-in. So you got 32 guys. Jay just said, y'all better be at camp at, check-in Sunday at 2:00. So, we'd all take off on Thursday or Friday and have to drive out there, and I remember riding with Lenny and Dave Fitzgerald in Lenny's little sports car, drove all the way to Oregon, So I think those are the fun stories when you spend that time with them, everybody in the summer and go to all these places. And of course, then we were the show. Everywhere we went, we were the show. Yeah. So every college kid if we were in Oregon, Medford, Oregon, every college kid within 2 hours that was a Division 1, 2, 3 NAI would show up and want a piece of us.
Yeah.
And then we go to Pennsylvania and have all the Edinburgh kids and the Lock Haven kids. And so you got a chance to wrestle a lot of guys.
Oh, that's cool.
It was a chance to wrestle a lot of guys.
Yeah, you mentioned Jay Robinson. I mean, what type of impact did he have on you?
Jay was an assistant coach for me my first 2, maybe 3 years. And then he took over at Minnesota. And I remember when he went to Minnesota, they were terrible. This was probably 84-ish, 85-ish. And Jay obviously made a great impact at Iowa. And I remember people saying, Jay's stupid. He should have never left Iowa. He can't win there. And, he showed him he can win there.
Yeah.
Yeah, he took him a while, but he ended up winning like 3 national titles there.
Sure did.
But he was just so black and white, Army Ranger. Everything was tough. I mean, if you worked his camps and you were a counselor, you had to run. Just the kids at J-Rob camp either had to run 12 or 15 miles. If you were a counselor for Jay, we had to run 2 of the 4 camps we worked. And I think he took a break on us. We had to run at least 9 or 12.
Wow.
So that's how you got your paycheck. Yeah. So the camp kids were on the last day of camp. The camp kids to graduate from J-Rob camp, you either had to run a 12 or 15 mile run the last morning, and then you got your T-shirt. Said I did it, right? So Jay got those kids to buy in. They'd run 12 and 15 miles to get a T-shirt, and half of them signed up for 15.
Yeah. So
think about it. You got 250 camp kids running around whatever town they're in to get their T-shirt. But the counselors, we had to get up and run too, and so. I remember thinking, man, like I've never ran 9 miles. You start pushing walls back and barriers back because of Jay Robinson.
Yeah.
Lou Bannick's out running 9 miles. The heavyweights are out running 9 miles. And I did that a couple times in the summer, every summer. That's how you got your paycheck.
Man, how tough was Jay Robinson?
He was. I mean, like I said, he was very black and white. He was like, we're just going to do it this way, and like Jay was just a tough guy, and him and Gable complemented each other well because they both really understood hard work, and I think Jay might actually in certain situations been tougher than Gable. Like when Jay ran practice, it was a different deal.
Really,
even from Gable.
Wow.
And Jay would find things that maybe weren't exactly specific to live wrestling, drills and stuff that were like, you're kidding, we're going to hip heist for 3 minutes, just stuff like that. Jay was tough.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, when he took over Minnesota, you're right, they were not good.
No.
And but boy, he made wow. I mean, I've got a lot of respect for him.
Oh, I do too.
Yeah,
Jay's. I mean, I had some great assistant coaches. Mark Johnson, Keith Morlam was my guy.
Yeah.
I mean, Keith was crazy as hell, but he was an unbelievable coach.
Great coach.
Yeah. I mean, he was. I wouldn't have won what I won without Keith. He made a big impact in my life. Like he took me under his wing, even from the recruiting process. He used to. He grew up in Webster City. He would come home and call me. We'd meet at Iowa Central and wrestle for an hour. This was when I was a senior in high school.
Yeah.
If there's a camp at Mason City, he'd show up. He'd tell me to show up there. Wow. So I started wrestling Keith when I was 18 years old. He made a big difference in my life.
He was pretty dang tough.
He was tough. Yeah, he won a couple of U.S. Opens in freestyle. Was an NCAA runner-up. Yeah, assistant coach at Iowa for a lot of years.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I remember Marlon. He was a great guy.
He's a work hard, play hard guy. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Work hard, play hard. Yeah.
Wow. Well, we're talking about all this program building with Jay Robinson and obviously Keith and everything. But I mean, when you look at Mount Rushmore of program builders, my God, I mean, there's no question you have to be on there. And yours actually, people don't understand that yours started at high school level.
Well, I got lucky and spoiled. My first job when I left Iowa City, I started at Grundy High School, and man, Grundy had it going on. I came back to the wrestling office one day in the summer of 1988, and there was a message on my board, pinned on my board with a number to call from Grundy, Virginia. They were looking for a head coach, and they were offering a lot of money for somebody to come run their program. So I had to go in and interview for that job that summer, and they probably had 5 other Division I wrestlers in there. I mean, they weren't messing around. They were flying in all kinds of guys to interview for the job. They'd already won 2 state titles. They had a tremendous facility. They had an unlimited budget to travel and to get kids the resources they needed. And so I got that job and didn't teach. They paid the heck out of me. Just ran wrestling practice and kind of oversaw the youth program. They had such a tremendous youth program. Really what I learned at Grundy, I took to Christiansburg, because Christiansburg was just the opposite. It had nothing.
Right.
It really had no support, no money, no nothing. And but Grundy was a really good place to really learn how to build. They really had a great model to build a solid high school program. They had control of the youth program, the middle school program, and the high school program all worked hand in hand together. And so there was such a really good connect. So when I was, at Grundy, every year I'd get a dozen 9th graders that had been wrestling for 7 years or 8 years. So think about that. If you're a high school coach and you get a dozen freshmen that come up, and they've already been wrestling. They've already put 200 matches under their belt.
Yeah.
I had some pretty good teams,
yeah,
really good teams. And then going to Christiansburg, started all over. We got it going. I hired Darrell Weber in 2000. We won a state title finally in 2001. We finally started beating Grundy, the machine that we built. We had to beat, and was there for 10 years, and that was, again, a great experience. That was really again, what I learned at Grundy helped build Christiansburg, all right? The one thing that's kind of a funny story that we had to do, though, was, I think I had I had way over $100,000 budget at Grundy, to travel and train and do everything we needed to do, and there were some salaries in there and stuff like that. But at Christiansburg, we had $300 in our athletic budget. All right, go from 100,000 to
Did you have 9 kids out your first year?
Yeah, we had maybe 11 kids out for wrestling, and the middle school program, I don't think even barely existed, and they had a small youth program. They had a couple good individuals there that were really wanted to, Coach Underwood and a guy named Todd Bartlett. There were some guys there that really wanted to dig in and roll up their sleeves and help the program. So those were guys that I leaned on early and hired a couple of my old Grundy wrestlers. But we didn't have the numbers. We didn't have the money. And oddly enough, I knew that once we started getting good there, first off, when we got there, we just had to win in our district. We just needed to win in our district because we weren't very good. And then we started getting, 2-3 years, we started getting good. And I'm like, now we got to do what Grundy did, because Grundy would travel all these places 6-7 hours away and get their kids really good competition. But it involved a charter bus, it involved hotel rooms, and there was no way I was getting all these Christiansburg kids, mom and dads, to fork out the money to go do all this. So I said, we got to figure out a way to raise money, and I stumbled across bingo, of all things. It was a huge deal. There was no gambling in Virginia but bingo and lottery tickets you could buy at the convenience store. So a couple coaches in the Richmond area that I got to know were talking about how in Virginia Beach and Richmond that these booster clubs, athletic booster clubs, are running bingo a couple nights a week, and they were making bank they were. So I studied it and kind of got into it and figured it out. And we leased an old abandoned grocery store, and we started bingo. And the first night we made $7,500 in 4 hours. Yeah, and we did it 2 nights. So we did it Friday night and Saturday night. We made $15,000, and we grossed $1.3 million the first year. And they let us. And the state law was you got to keep 10%. So we made $130,000 the first year that we could use for wrestling.
Wow.
Yeah. So we could pay salaries. That's how I paid Darrell Weber.
Yeah.
We could go on trips. So now all these kids we were going to the Beast of the East. We were going to Ironman. We were going to Fargo, and everything was paid for.
Yeah.
So I said, man, Dressler, you're a good recruiter. I said, I didn't even need to recruit then, because all the parents, all the crazy wrestling parents up and down the East Coast heard that if I come to Christiansburg, my kid's going to go to Fargo for free, Beast of the East for free, Ironman for free. I didn't have to work really hard at recruiting. And guess what? You're going to get a lot of D1 looks because you're going to go to all those tournaments.
Yeah.
And now you're going to get scholarship opportunities.
Yeah.
So then a kid like Cody Gardner moves from New Jersey down, and then the ball just starts rolling. And I literally, and I like always, you catch a lot of heat for recruiting, but we literally had kids show up at Christiansburg at the beginning of school, their 9th grade year, that I didn't even know were coming.
Really?
Yeah, like I just get a call from the assistant principal, like, hey, you got the 3rd-ranked kid from New Jersey in the nation down here at the school checking in. I'm like, really? I swear to God, I had 2 kids that I didn't even know. Like they just had heard from other Jersey kids, like, you need to come down here because everything's going to get paid for.
Really?
Wow. So that bingo was really instrumental in us taking a big jump at Christiansburg.
I remember the bingo. That was like, wow,
it was work.
Yeah.
Like, Weber worked bingo. I'd made the coaches work bingo.
Yeah.
I mean, you had to have.
But then you guys had practice out of that bingo hall.
Yep.
Yeah.
So 6 or 7 parents had to work it. We did it every Friday and every Saturday night, and they had to volunteer, and it was 5 hours of grinding. In a smoke-filled. Think about it, we had 160 bingo players, 150 of them were smoking cigarettes.
Yes.
So you had to earn. There's probably going to be some lawsuits coming for me with cancer, like from some of my parents, because we really had to grind.
Yeah.
But we did it we started it, I think, in like 97 or 98, and they were running it in Christiansburg up until a year or two ago. They might not be running it anymore, but and we ended up making we made, I think, their 3rd year, we made over 1.5 million grossed, and then we got to keep 10% of it.
Wow.
So it helped. That's how I was able to hire Daryl, because there's no way you could hire a guy like that to come in.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of kids out. That got the ball rolling. We had 180, 190 kids in our youth program.
Really?
Yeah. We started a really good middle school program. So yeah, that's how. Again, and a lot of that I credit to, in terms of just the structure and how the elementary schools interacted with the middle school and the high school and building the whole structure, how you really build a program. And you could do it in any sport. They really had the model. They got it.
Yeah. Now it's gotten so different now. Now it's like, that's because that's obviously when I started coaching high school in '96. I graduated in Iowa in '96. Went right to Durant, Iowa.
Yeah.
Started building the program, and that was the way it went. Youth program feeds your middle school program feeds your high school program. Now with these clubs, I mean, you're lucky to get 2 years out of your kid when they start a youth program. Now they go find the big clubs.
Definitely changed. Yeah, definitely.
The whole
changed.
dynamics is basically changed now.
And when I was at Christiansburg, the clubs were just starting to kind of pop up around the East Coast, and so. But I still think if you have a really strong high school, in Iowa, the other thing that hurts Iowa is the Iowa high school rules don't allow high school coaches to be around their athletes in the off season.
Yeah, that's right.
In Virginia, we didn't have that, so I was around. Like if you wrestled for me at Grundy or Christiansburg High School, you were wrestling in the summer. Like it was it wasn't debatable.
Right.
You were wrestling, right?
Yeah.
We were going to start in June, and we were going to have a trip in the end of July, middle of July, where we'd have a fun trip. We'd go to a theme park or do something, but you were going to wrestle for 6 or 7 weeks. Like, you get a week off over the 4th of July, but it was not negotiable. You were wrestling.
Wow.
And then football practice would start, and, we'd have a lot of our guys go play football, and that was their break.
Mm-hmm. Now, didn't you took a little break between Grundy and Christiansburg, didn't you?
Actually, I did. Yeah.
I remember talking to you about it.
I thought I was ready to get out after being in Grundy for 8 years, and met my wife. She was from Blacksburg, Virginia, and I had an older guy there that I got friends with that got me into financial services. I mean, I didn't teach in Grundy. I was bored to death, to be quite honest, a lot of the time, because I'd wait till 3:30 and the kids would show up. So he convinced me to get my broker's license, like my mutual fund license, my life insurance license, and I started making some, really good money on the side doing that. Thinking that I was Joe salesman, but now that I look back at it, I was the head wrestling coach in a town that was wrestling crazy. If I showed up at their house, they were just glad to have me there.
Yeah.
So I was setting records, selling financial products, thinking I was a superstar salesman. Then I realized this guy just got me in the right market. I was in the right market. So I decided. So I moved back to Des Moines, worked for Smith Barney, and after about 5 months of that, I came home. We lived in Ankeny, and I told my wife, I said, this ain't for me.
Yeah.
I got coaching's where I want to be. And at that particular time in 1996, high school in Iowa, you had to teach, I think. And so I said, well, let's go back, because she was from there. Let's go back to Blacksburg. And I called the old coach up. I remember calling him one time in October, and wrestling season was starting in November. And he used to kid around with me, the old Christiansburg coach. He was a guy in his late 50s at the time, and he used to say, "Hey, if you ever want to leave Grundy and come to Christiansburg, I'll be your assistant." You know, it was just kind of a joke in the coach's room. So I called him up, took him up on it. I said, "Coach Underwood, this is Coach Dressler." I said, "I want to come coach at Christiansburg and have you be my assistant." Just a cold call, you know. I'd only talked to the guy 3 times a year of my life, you know.
Really?
And he said, "Let's do it." And that's how it started. You know, that's how Christiansburg started.
No kidding. Now, why Virginia? Why move back to? You just love the state out there?
I just loved Virginia, and my wife's family was from there, and I didn't have to be a teacher.
Right.
But in Iowa, I needed to be a teacher, and I needed to get some. I had to go back to school for something.
Right.
And I didn't like school, so I wasn't like interested. I was like, let's go. I want to go coach right now.
Yeah, Virginia's a great state though. It's a really great place to stay.
Southwest Virginia is beautiful.
Yep.
You know, just beautiful place to live. Great climate. Crazy, not crazy cold winters, not crazy hot summers. It's just a great place.
Yeah, but then the D1 levels came a knocking.
Yeah, timing was really good. It's funny. I was probably going to only do one more year of Christiansburg. To be quite honest, the craziness of all those parents moving down from New Jersey broke me. Freaking broke me. And I was really going to just like do one more year. And Daryl was so good, and he'd been my assistant for like 5 years, so he was probably tired of hearing me talk, and he was ready to be the guy. So it worked out perfect. And I literally had to. I mean, I didn't even move from where I lived in Southwest Virginia. I lived in a little town called Reiner, and didn't have to move to take the Virginia Tech job. And so that was just a crazy. Really, I was just kind of called in there by the athletic director, who's passed away now, Jim Weaver, to be a consultant to hire the new coach. That's what I was originally. That's how the whole Virginia Tech thing started. And we had a couple people. Jim Zaleski, of all people, was coming out looking at it.
Wow.
And he canceled his visit because he got the job at Oregon State. And Tom Brands had just left. And so there was a lot of unrest at Virginia Tech. And so the AD brought me in and said, "Why don't you take the job?" So that's how we started talking about the job. So he offered me the job while I was consulting.
Wow.
You know, and that was in 2006. And so we struggled. Everybody thinks, you know, Virginia Tech, we finished out good. But in 2007, at our first NCAA tournament, we got 81st out of 81 teams that were there. We got dead last.
Really?
And the next year, we got 79th out of 79 teams that were there, dead last. We didn't win a match at the NCAA tournament until our third year in the consolations. We didn't even win one match, you know. So it wasn't like we showed up and we were just kicking everybody's rear. It was work. Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yep. We didn't.
81 out of 81.
We were 81st out of 81 teams, and we were dead last in both years. Now we were tied with some teams for dead last, but I mean, when you got zero.
Yeah.
0-0.
0-0.
Yeah. The only way we could have got dead last if we would have thrown our headgear and been -1, but we didn't do that. So, but it was a good. You know, and Tony Roby, and I had some great assistant coaches. Nate Yetzer helped us out for a while. Gosh, we had some good assistant coaches in there. That David Hoffman.
Yep.
We had some great assistant coaches, and obviously Tony Roby's doing a great job there. But you know, I always felt like that place was, because of where it was located and just the niceness of Blacksburg, could have been a wrestling gold mine, and now you see that it is. And I mean, we had a lot of New Jersey kids, Pennsylvania kids, Ohio kids, and those are 3 great wrestling states. Yeah. And we drew a lot from those states. And you know, and it also helped that we had a really, really strong club at Christiansburg. And, you know, we get Joey Dance, we get Devin Carter, we get the Epperleys, you know, that the kids that were kind of came through our program. Yeah. You know, so it was a good mix.
Now, when you started at all these different programs, obviously you said that Grundy was a little bit different, obviously, because they already had some stuff. They already had a pretty, you know, not that they were established, not where you had them, because you obviously took it to another level. But were there some Gable philosophies, Dressler's philosophies, certain philosophies, and certain absolutes at every single place? This is how we're going to do this, and we're going to. Or did you figure it out at the different places because they were different?
I think the core mindset is the same everywhere. You have different challenges at different places. I mean, at Grundy, I never heard no. At Christiansburg, I had heard no every time I went and asked for something. So you got to figure out how to get around no and get to yes. So those are different. I mean,
what would be a no? Like, I mean, just like
the
travel and whatever.
No, you can't. You have no input in who you're going to hire. We're going to hire the middle school coach, and you have no input. And I go, wow. No, that ain't going to work because I got to make sure somebody's aligned with me.
Yeah.
You know, so remember having a fight about that and eventually winning that fight. You know, but that was a problem I did not have. You know, at Virginia Tech, who I wanted to hire was challenged a lot, and the process is at Iowa State. Boom, you want to hire this guy? We hire this guy. You know.
Oh wow.
So you know, the little bitty internal issues that you have to get to where you want to be are different everywhere else. But again, it kind of goes back to what we talked about at the beginning with just when you grow, when you get put into such an elite situation and you're around that, and that's who you become. You become somebody that the standard's high and the work ethic and the standard's high and how much time we're going to spend working at this sport, and the standard's high. Like, what did you sign up for? Like when I went to Christiansburg, they were terrible, but from day one I signed up to win the state championship. And so there's certain levels of commitment, and so you got to get everybody. You got to get your assistant coaches. You got to get your athletes buying into. Like I told my athletes at Christiansburg, like, you come here, like, you're going to leave with one state title. Like that's the goal. That's the bare minimum. And if you get one, then we're going to try to get you two. And if you get two, we're going to try to get you three. But that's the goal. That's the line that we're shooting for. We're not here just to have a good team. Right? We're gonna win. We're gonna get state champions, and your name's gonna be on the wall, and it's gonna be really big. And then over here on this other walls, there's gonna be little bitty names. They're called the place finishers, the place winners. All right, we don't like that wall. All right, you came here to get on this wall, right? So that's the job, is to get on this wall right here. Right. So that's what we're training for. So when I tell you you're coming in at 6:30. It's so you can get on that wall, right? That's why you're coming in at 6:30 in the morning, okay? So I think when you set that standard, but again, that was a standard that I spent listening to Coach Gable talk about, like, hey, you got to make sure that when you show up to weigh-ins that you've worked harder than that guy. So when things get hard Wednesday afternoon at practice, are you going to sit down, or are you going to get up and run 2 more sprints because you're thinking about Joe Gibbons over here, or whoever you got to wrestle, you know? Yeah. That was just the standard. And so that was the one thing that I've tried to, and I took, probably not even realizing it, to everywhere that I've been, is there's got to be we got to pay that price. Once we pay that price, then we're in the ball game. Yeah. You're like, we got a good team this year, but we've had a lot of guys that have paid a lot of dues up to now. Yeah.
Now, when you first got to Christiansburg, where did you feel like where the switch happened, where it turned? I mean, you started with a team that had literally 11 kids on it, you know, just really no program whatsoever, and now all of a sudden you're in the top 5 in the country.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't say that, okay, all of a sudden the second year this happened or that happened. You know, you put your head down and you just go to work, and then, you know, you kind of have blinders on, and then all of a sudden you got to, you know, these 2 kids get really, really good, and then you got a couple 8th graders that you worked with for 2 or 3 years now that are coming in, or 9th graders, and then you got this crazy parent from New Jersey moving down, and then all of a sudden you look around, and you're like, dang, you know, like we're getting good. Yeah. You know, kind of like here, all of a sudden you just put your head down and you're 45th in the nation the first year we're here. Yeah. You know, and you're like, okay, now we're 19th, and now we're you know 9th, and then you get 4th, and you don't know if there's like one. It's kind of like becoming a really good college wrestler. Can you say that you remember like one day in practice where all of a sudden you were good? No. You know, you just come in and you take your whoopings, and hopefully you're starting to give them out, and then all of a sudden the light gets a little clearer at the end of the tunnel, and you're beating All-Americans in college, and you're thinking, okay, if I'm beating All-Americans, then I must be good enough to be an All-American. And then all of a sudden you're taking Randy Lewis down 3 or 4 times in a row, and you're kicking Barry Davis's butt, and you're taking Lenny Zaleski down, and then you're like, dang, I might be ready to win the nationals. You know? Yeah. I think that's just how you evolve in anything, where you go from, I don't want to say average, but from mediocre to average to good to great.
No, that's a pretty interesting point there. Yeah, as far as that outlook. Now, when you were at Tech, this is one thing I've always been really interested in. Who is what was the time, the era, the class, I guess, of kids where you're like, okay, this is going to be different. This is where we're going to start really making some noise.
Yeah, I think the year
was it like with Joey Dance and
it was probably before. It was before Joey Dance.
Devin Carter.
We had a class. Devin was probably the last piece of that, but Devin was like the first big blue chip recruit we got. But we hit a couple guys that were under the radar nationally at the start of their senior year, and I remember bringing in 3 guys specifically: Gerard Garnett, Pete Yates, and Jesse Dong.
Yeah, Jesse Dong.
Those 3 guys really like. We started beating teams our 3rd and 4th year that were good. Like I remember going out wrestling Central Michigan, who was really good back then in Michigan, back to back, and we beat both of them. Like our 3rd year, people are like, whoa. And I think our 4th year we beat Oklahoma State and Wisconsin. Yeah. And we're like, and that was that generation. And then you had Matt Epperly that contributed, and then you bring in Devin Carter at the tail end of that. We had a kid named David Maroney. I'm probably missing 1 or 2 there. And if I didn't say your name, don't be mad at me. But those 3 guys specifically, I remember Jesse, Pete, and Gerard came in together. And I think they were the same class, and those guys won a lot of matches for us. Yeah, and Jesse got to the round of 12 a bunch of times. He was really good. He didn't sneak on there at All-American, but he was really good, tough as crap.
Yeah, that's what I remember. I remember you talking specifically
Yates
about him.
Yates got on the podium at least twice, and Gerard got on the podium and got to the round of 12 a couple times. And for that time at Virginia Tech, that was really, we were moving the bar.
Right. Yeah, I remember you specifically talking about Jesse Dong.
Yeah.
At the time you're like, oh, yeah, geez, he's so tough. He's just a tough dude.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Could train.
I loved watching him wrestle.
He could train at a high level.
Yeah.
Like he could. Yeah.
Wow.
He was fun.
And Pete and Yates was the one that, like, because that was at the time when Georgia wrestling really started kind of coming on the scene, and he was kind of the
first
that
guy.
state. Yeah, he was the first one that really did some stuff after.
And he's running a great club down there. He's producing a lot of studs, but Pete was really skilled guy, and just needed the toughness of a college room.
Right.
But he was tough. Him and Jesse Dong used to have some wars together.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because those guys were about the same weight.
Yeah.
And so then you throw Devin Carter, and then you bring him in, and he's a young guy in that mix. So that's how we first started. That's how we got in the top 10 with that group.
Yeah. Yeah. What was your favorite matchups from those Tech days? You used to just sit back and watch scrapping. You mentioned Dong and Yates had some great ones. Yeah,
those guys. Yep. Those guys scrapped hard, and then you started getting like Zavatskis and the Zach Epperleys of the world, and the Solomon Shiskos, and the Dave McFadden's, and those guys that the Joey Dances. Those guys, got us a trophy in 2016. So. Gosh, there was a bunch of good guys in that group there. Ty Walls ended up being an All-American a couple times. So just a bunch of good guys. And again, I'm probably forgetting somebody, but there was just a good group of guys that, we had 6 All-Americans in 2016. Yeah. So it was a good group.
Yeah. I mean, I remember, because that's the first time I met with Tony Roby. That was down at UN Weber's camps. Yeah. And what a great guy. And he, you guys were together for quite a while.
Yeah, Tony was my first hire. I mean, that's when I went out and hired right away.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because you plucked him from where was he? Was at?
He was actually
wasn't at Binghamton,
the head coach at Binghamton.
Binghamton.
He was. They had just kind of revived the program, and he was the head coach there.
Yeah.
And so, but Tony was an assistant coach at Michigan and did a good job there. And Tony was very open to the fact, like, hey, I want to be like at a Power 4 school. Like, I think he saw Binghamton was going to be a tough road to hoe. Right. Not that he couldn't have done a good job there, but I think he liked the idea of getting in there. And so, but Tony's just he's smart, and he's really a hard worker.
Yeah. That's
a good combination to have, right, in anything you do. But he's very both, and he's at a great place. He's at a great place. Like he's paid his dues, and those guys are winning.
Right. Oh yeah, they're doing well. When you make your hires, obviously you mentioned hiring Weber when you're at Christiansburg, Roby, the staff you have here. Yeah. What's your way of, like, I guess, analyzing? Is this person going to be a fit? I mean, what the skill sets they have? What are you looking at when you're looking at hiring? Because they seem to stay with you a while. I mean, you and Tony together forever. I mean, you and Daryl. I mean, this staff's been together for a while.
I think there's obviously the wrestling world's a small world, so you call around, and Mike Hassey is a friend of mine that wrestled at Edinburgh. And so Tony Roby was at Edinburgh. So, the first call you make is Mike Hassey, and he says, yeah, Roby's really good. And then you call around to some other people. And so, the networking starts pretty quick. And obviously I knew a little bit about Derek St. John, just because he was at Iowa, and Mark Ryland was a guy that I spent a lot of time with when I was at Iowa. I kind of recruited Mark to Iowa. So I was, knew Mark Ryland when he was 5 years old.
Yeah.
And Mark Ryland coached Derek St. John. So again, you're talking to people, had a lot of really good. Daryl Weber was a tremendous coach. I've had a lot of really, really good assistant coaches. And I think you're only as good as the people that you hire around you. So every time you make this big build, they're like, when you have a really good build, then it's Dressler's great at building, but Dressler might be better at hiring than building because you get good guys in there that help you pull the sled, and the sled takes off. And so you're never perfect at it, but I think I've done more, a lot of really good hires in all my years.
Yeah, no, I mean, most certainly. And speaking of which, I mean, obviously, probably the last topic we're going to get into, but the switch, the famous switch here to Iowa State, all Hawkeye staff to Iowa State. I remember, man, when there was some rumblings, the fact that these guys might be going after you and bringing Dressler back to Iowa, but at Iowa State, I'm like, ooh.
Yeah, that
probably
didn't make a buzz.
It's going to get interesting.
Our whole staff was all ex-Iowa guys, so
I know.
It made a splash and everything. But that's the great thing about Iowa is just even like last night. What for a Sunday night at 7 p.m. Iowa State and UNI wrestle. What a great crowd!
It was a great.
That's
crowd.
the great thing. I mean, we had 300 and some thousand people watch the Iowa State do a live on ESPN on the flagship station.
Wow!
I mean, that's just again. People that aren't from Iowa probably get tired of me bragging about how big wrestling is here, but it's the truth.
It is.
It's like so anytime, like when we got hired, just because there's so many eyes on the sport of wrestling in Iowa that everything's big news,
Yeah.
If they say something bad about us or we say something bad about them, it's gonna be out there. Even Schwab, if I say something bad about Schwab, then the UNI people are on me, So
you can't say anything bad about Schwab, though. Can
he's
you?
a crazy man.
I mean,
he's a great coach. I tell you what, he's a great coach.
Yeah.
There's some really good coaches out there right now. There's, we go down the recruiting trail. I tell some parents out there, like when we talk to parents, I say, hey, I'm going to talk about everything about Iowa State. I said, because there's the choices you got there. If you tell me you got that narrowed down to 5 schools, like I would send my kid to 4 of those schools, just because I trust the staff that they're not only going to take care of my kid, but they're going to get better at wrestling.
Right.
There's some good staffs out there right now.
Yeah. Well, there's only, how many?
I think there's only 79 right now. 79 Division I schools, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, that doesn't leave a whole lot of.
No.
I mean, you got to have a pretty solid person
tough to
on
get
staff.
a good coaching job, and it's tough to make a team if you're, think about 275,000 high school wrestlers have to funnel into 79 Division I programs if you want to be a Division I wrestler.
Yeah.
Your odds are like 0.00002, to make a Division I roster.
Yeah.
It's
insane.
It's like 0.00001 to start. It's a tough gig.
Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, you start looking at numbers like that, it's crazy.
Yeah,
it really is. I mean, but now, so what's always been, I always wanted to pick your brain about. Obviously, when you started the Virginia Tech, and started building that program from where it was, and you, like as you mentioned before, Iowa State wasn't necessarily in the at the top, but when you took this program over as well, but there had to be just being in the different times, especially now with the NIL. I mean, there's so many different moving parts now as compared to when you first started coaching Division I wrestling. What's some of the biggest glaring differences now?
It's amazing how much my job's changed since I got hired here. I got hired here 9 years ago this month, or almost 9 years ago to the day. If you would have told me that
it's been 9 years already.
9 years, yeah.
Wow.
2017, so 9 years. I think it was February 21st was my first day, and what are we doing this on February 16th? So it's almost been 9 years exactly. If you would have been telling me that I'd be having discussions with parents and kids about how much you're going to get paid to wrestle, I would have said, you're crazy as hell. No way. 9 years ago, And that's the biggest change. And then on top of it, all right, it's one thing to go out and raise money to pay a couple RTC guys. That's work, right? But now you got to go out and indirectly raise money for RTC guys, which you can go out and say. But then now you got to go out and talk about how you build your NIL. And luckily at Iowa State we've got rev share, so I can go out and talk to donors about, hey, we got $1 million to spend on our team next year. And if you donate, you make a contribution to Iowa State Foundation, that your money's going to be helping us pay for wrestlers next year. So you're going to make a direct impact. So, back in the days when you donate money and it goes to the RTC, well, what does that mean? Does it go to this guy? Does it go to that guy? It's a little bit gray. Mm-hmm. Now I can say, all right, your money's going to go to the next 125 pounder we got, So from that perspective, it's a little bit, if you're a donor, like, okay, I kind of feel like I just bought my, horse at the Kentucky Derby. Mm-hmm. So some donors like that. And some donors is like, I hate NIL. My money's going to the RTC to help David Carr go win an Olympic gold, right? So you got to kind of figure out your donor and find out what do they like, and then you push that money that way.
That's interesting.
We've got a guy that likes to help wrestlers, the college wrestlers. He understands the NIL game, and he wants his money to go to the NIL world.
Huh.
So the fact that what you're asking me is what's changed the most is that right there.
Yeah.
It's just that you're like having conversations with people about, all right, we need some money, so we need to fund that $1 million, right? We got $1 million to spend, but our AD goes, you got to fund it, right? So that we're going to fund that baby, and you're going to have some say. You're you want a weight class? You want 2 weight classes? What do you want?
Wow. Back in the 80s, during your era, which teammate of yours would have brought in the most NIL money?
Well, Goldman was in the finals 4 times, but he didn't need money. He was a Goldman, if you're Goldman Sachs, so he didn't need money. But he's going to be busting my balls for saying that. But he obviously would have drawn a pretty penny because you go get second in the nation as a freshman, your street value is like, boop.
Especially upper weights. I
was on shoes and books, so that's all I got right away. So, shoes and gear.
How about a character like Randy Lewis? Would they pay big money for him?
Yeah, and again, he grew up in a family that had a lot of money, relatively. He didn't really care about money. He just spent a lot of it. He would have got it. If he would have got his check on Monday, he would have had it gone by Tuesday. We don't want to talk about what he would have spent it on, but he would have been gone. All right. Obviously, Marty Kistler was a 3-time All-American, a 2-time champ. We had a lot of guys. Mm-hmm. It would have taken and I'm sure I would have had the money, but if it would have been NIL back in the day, we would have had a lot of wealthy dudes. Mm-hmm. And it'd be, it's curious to see, how guys jump around because there are guys out there that are just in for the money. It's going to be that way in all sports.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Was there is like the star power thing? Is it basically like, is it NIL? Is it more, okay, results? You're a 2-time All-American, you're a couple-time you're a national champ, whatever. Or is there some star power behind it as well when it comes to the equation?
I think there's a market out there for everything. When you start paying people, there become a market forms in terms of, all right, what's the street value of an All-American versus a top 3 guy versus a champ? Mm-hmm. And then I think you got to then what also drives a little bit of supply and demand. So, all right, if I don't have I want to really compete at the highest level and we don't have a 133, then we got to go find a 133. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we might pay more than market value if we have the money. Mm-hmm. Because we want to win, and we don't. Our 133 that we got coming back next year doesn't appear like he's going to be able to score any points at the Nationals. Mm-hmm. And in my model is I want to have a guy at every weight that can score significant points. Like I want guys that can get into Friday late, mm-hmm. right? And so what's it cost to get that guy to fill that hole? I don't. National champions are going to go for more money.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is right now.
Yeah.
And so you have to decide. And there's guys out there that aren't, there's guys out there that aren't all about the money either. I mean, there's guys out there that are. And I'm guessing it's probably the same way in the NFL and the NBA.
Right.
And there's some guys that are really motivated. They're playing because of money. Mm-hmm. And there's some guys that just love the sport and they'd probably take less money. And I know we have guys like that too, And I think if you really like your institution, like Younger could have went somewhere for a lot more money.
Right.
And he just loves Iowa State. Yeah. He could have probably got 2 times the money somewhere.
Yeah, you could tell that like last night, just wrestling in the dual meet. I mean, how the crowd loves him. He's a
freaking rock star here. Yeah. I mean, and he's been here, and you look at those guys from Cuba. Shoot, they came from nothing. Like they came from nothing.
Right.
So just to get here and get the
gear.
How
did that all come about? How did
gear
and Ichimedia get here?
Well, Ichimedia came over. On a boat, and his story is all documented on Flow. Mm-hmm. So he was the first one that came over, and he knew Younger. Mm-hmm. And so, they kind of start talking, and Younger came over on an F1 student visa, which is how, a lot of international students mm-hmm. come into college. So we brought him over kind of traditionally. Mm-hmm. but Anthony came over, and he was at a high school. He went to Sunnyside High School, senior year high school in Arizona.
That's right.
So every one of them kind of came over here differently. But no, those kids really appreciate. They really appreciate what they've. If I see videos and I see footage of. I've never been to Cuba, but I see video and footage of Cuba and how they trained and where they lived and their gyms and their homes, and they grew up. And that's how everybody grows up in Cuba, pretty much.
Right.
So they grew up. I mean, no air conditioning.
Wow.
No, you think about that. You're in Cuba. No air conditioning, and just the stuff that how they grew up.
Wow. Well, now obviously you're looking at primarily an international style of wrestling. When they come from Cuba, what was the most difficult part? Obviously, this is going to be the mat wrestling part of it.
The bottom's the hardest part.
Yeah. Is that the mat, the bottom part?
You think about it, their whole life they've been taught to do belly out base. Yeah. And so now we got all these little tricks and nuances, in folk style wrestling and top bottom. Yeah. So and I do believe your formative years. I think what you learn by the time you start wrestling until you're about 17, 18 years old, that's your formative years. I always say when a kid comes to college and he's 18-year-old and he doesn't have a good leg attack, doesn't have a good high crotch or a good single leg, it's really going to be hard to win. Like you have to have that when you come in the door. Right. It's really hard to develop if you don't have that coming in the door. So think about that. They've never done a switch. They've never done a side roll.
Yep.
They've never done a stand-up.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you got to learn all that. You've never done a sit to your butt and tuck and go, So it's not as easy. People say, well, you got to teach him how to wrestle in the bottom. Well, guess what? Damn, we're teaching him. Right? He's only 12 years behind the rest of us. So, I got all these Saturday or Monday morning quarterbacks that are like, well, you got to work on the bottom with him. Well, come watch us. We are, but he can't get away.
Yeah.
He still can't get away. So they're doing much better.
Yeah. Now those two they'll join the RTC, I'm assuming.
Yep.
And then
those guys will be a threat in freestyle.
Yeah, because you've already started having some, obviously with David, in international success.
Yep.
Kind of talk a little bit about your RTC and what's going on there, and obviously, David's a huge part of it. He's
well, the RTCs back when I got hired was the shiny silver penny that everybody needed, because if you had an RTC stocked with really good postgraduates, you were very attractive to the high school market out there, because wrestling parents are weird. They want to know who's going to beat my kid up.
Yep.
Who's going to train my kid for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
So. We had Cuban Gadsden, right away, and we had some other guys. And obviously, when David graduated, that's always going to be the goal, is to have your Iowa State student athletes stay. And so Younger will be in the RTC next year. That'll be great.
Right.
The following year, Anthony will roll in. We've got Marcus Coleman, who was just left.
That's right.
Northwestern was in. So keeping our guys here to train. Having David Carr in the RTC is invaluable, not only as a workout partner, but just a role model and just such a positive guy. And they've all seen him do it. And again, that kind of goes back to Iowa. When you go to Iowa and you walk in the room, there's 5 NCAA champs, 2 world champs, 2 Olympic champs, a bunch of medalists, 15 All-Americans. You're like, shit, I better get going.
Yeah.
Where most programs you go in, like, man, we just need to get an All-American or 2, But when you walk into that, so that's what's nice about David is David's expectation is, man, you better be here to win. He tells them.
Yeah. For sure. Now, going back to what you just said about the Iowa room, being in that room at the time, what's a funny story that Coach Gable got on you? What's one story in your mind that's kind of etched in your mind with you and Coach Gable? But could be got mad at you one time, could be said something funny to you.
So when I first, probably the one that was early in my career, when we'd go to open tournaments, and I wasn't the guy, I wasn't the starter, I wasn't, anybody. They would introduce me, like on mat 2 would be Kevin Dressler. They'd throw that L in there. And I'm like, I remember one time warming up and he was right beside me, and I said, they can't even freaking get my name right. I just kind of was talking under my breath.
Yeah.
And he heard me say that. And so every now and then he'd walk by me and say, hey, how you doing, Dressler? How you doing, Dressler? He'd just mess with me that way. And then I remember finally at the end, there was I don't know, maybe it was after I won nationals or one big tournament or something. He said, hey, I think you might be Kevin Dressler by now or something. He said, I think that L went away or something. So And he might not even remember that, but I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember him saying that. But I'm sure he'll remember the Dressler part. But
I'm
I don't know if
sure.
he ever gave me credit to to say that now they can call you Dresser instead of Dressler.
Yeah. Now back then he probably used to wrestle a lot.
Geez, yeah.
So I'm sure you had your hands on him.
In his 30s and this.
Oh man.
It's to say you just watching that guy on a daily basis, you're like, man, like he's wrestling for. He's got two guys trading off on him, and he's been wrestling for 40 minutes and got one drink. You know, I mean, he just was a machine. You know, he'd get.
What was it like wrestling a 30-year-old
guys.
version of Dan Gable? I remember I was wrestling a 55-year-old one, and it was bad enough. It's awful.
Yeah, I used to wrestle him a little bit in mid '80s, like when I was kind of getting out in '85 and '86. I worked out them a couple times, and of course, it didn't go well for me. But it wasn't like on his feet that I could kind of hang around with him on his feet. But
Yeah.
when he got on top of you, just like what he did was brutal. Like his ability to understand pressure and get like a hammer lock or chicken wing or bar, and understand pressure was. I mean, I saw him turning when I first got there. I saw him turning the Bannock's, Pete Bush, all these guys that were 190 and. You know, the Bannock brothers were Olympic champs in '84. Like if he'd get a bar on him, he'd pin him. I mean, he was just phenomenal. With his top game was just really, really good.
Wow.
And he never got tired.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
he just like get you in a pinhole, turn you over, hold, make sure you got like an 8 count on you, and then he'd roll you back to your belly, and then he'd jump to the other side and turn you over and get like an 8 count on you, and just make sure you knew that you were getting pinned for a couple minutes.
Yeah.
Like 2 minutes of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
I remember in the 90s, I mean, his attention to time was not very good. His mind was always warped when it comes like, 5 minutes. Oh, okay, we have 15 minutes later. How bad was it in the 80s?
Yeah, he just worked out a lot. Like he'd start warming up about halfway through practice when I was there, and he'd warm up for 45 minutes. I mean, he was in a full sweat. Maybe not 45, but 30 minutes at least. His warm up was, he'd be doing his running, his jogging, his shots, his, drilling, and then, he'd jump into live wrestling, maybe with 30 minutes to go, and then get a drink of water, and we'd do some sprints or something, and he'd just live wrestle for another 30 minutes. So he was definitely in his own world. I mean, as I kind of got to the end of my career, maybe not as much, but at least 2 or 3 days a week he was live wrestling. That's when he was in his late 30s.
Yeah.
So, and then summertime a lot.
Yeah. Wow. What's some really good piece of coaching advice he's given you?
I think what the beauty of Gable was just observing him, because he didn't talk a lot then. He's obviously, like we all get older, we talk more. I think the example he set, just like what you said, from watching him, And the one thing that I'll always remember, and I said it earlier about Gable was, and I tell my team this all the time, is like he always reminded you that he was really good at knowing who was your competition out there and using that guy as not leverage, but motivation. Like, hey, what's Joe Gibbons doing today? What's Pete Yazzo doing today? Did he quit running? Or is he taking the morning off? Might say it kind of in jest, but you got it. Like, so he was always, what are the Russians doing? You've heard him say that a million times.
Oh yeah.
Like, what are the Russians doing today?
Yeah.
So that's how he'd motivate his international athletes. It's like, that was the one thing, besides just watching him, that was the one thing that I remember him saying. And, I think the beauty of Gable was the environment he put together was just so freaking good. Like I said, that so many good guys in the room, so many alpha males, so many guys that everything was so competitive.
Yeah. Perfect. One piece of coaching advice before we get out of here. All the up and coming coaches. Coach, high school, college, it doesn't matter.
I think it's really important for you to know exactly what you want when you get there. I think when you know exactly what you want and you can see it and you can close your eyes and you can visualize it, I think that's a good starting point. Now you got to, figure out how you're going to do it and go, and then the hard part comes to work. Mm-hmm. But I don't think if you don't have a really clear picture of what you want, it's this sport, especially wrestling, is too hard because you go in there and you beat your brains against the wall every day.
Right.
And if you don't have that, and I think the longer you do that, if you come in and you have that vision like, hey, I'm here to be a national champion, right? Well, not many guys are good enough to come in and be a national champion right away. So there's got to be something to get you from here to here. I think the guys that have that really, really clear picture and know exactly what they want, I think they have a little better chance to get it, because they're still going to have to punch the clock and do the hard stuff. But if that vision out there is really, really clear, like I went to college to be a national champ, like that was it. So, I mean, I kid people, I lost 5 wrestle-offs my first 3 years. My record in wrestle-offs was 2-5.
Really?
Yeah. So
2.
Yeah,
2.
I won 2 matches out of 7 wrestle-offs. I only won 2.
Really?
Yeah. So I had to
Who beat
really
ya?
suck it up. I lost to Kerber twice. I lost to Lenny twice. I lost to Bob Kaufman, or maybe I lost to Bob Kaufman twice and Lenny once. But I lost 5 times.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I got fish hooked, double fish hooked once. Yeah. So I lost some wrestle-offs, and but the thing that pulled me through is that, like, I went there, like, I'm going to get this done. I'm going to get this done. So I think you got to have a really clear picture of what you want. That's why, like, when I was a high school coach, I took all my middle school kids to the state championships, and I made sure they got to see the state finals.
Yeah.
So, like, all right, now you see when the lights go out and they do that strobe light, and we even would go so far as to take them in the weighing room, like, between rounds.
Really?
Like, I wanted them to see, like, all right, if I make the team at Grundy or Christiansburg High School, I get to go here, and then this is what the state finals look like.
That's great.
So I think it's really good to see that. So I got to see the NCAA championships when I was a junior in high school. It was at Ames High School. At Ames, it was here at Iowa State University. When I was an 8th grader, I went to Vets Auditorium. So I think when you get a really clear picture of what you want, I think that's a great starting point. Now you got to roll up your sleeves and go to work, because, I'm sure if I asked my guys, a lot of them would want to be national champs, but how many of them actually really come to college? Like, you want to recruit those kids that come to college. Like, David Carr wanted to be a national champ the first day he got here.
Right.
And so then it's possible.
Love it.
So
Kevin
that's
Dressler,
my advice.
you are the man.
Good stuff. Thank you.
Love it. Love the interview. Love the conversation. It's always love seeing you. You're doing a great job here. And like I said, man, love having you on. Thanks so much.
Good luck.